When was the last time you read a book or even read a full article in social media? Can you read what's in the text? Or perhaps the more important question is, do you understand what's in the text? Well, for 24 million Filipinos aged 10 to 64 years old, comprehension or applying their reading, writing, and math skills in everyday life is a challenge. You're considered functionally illiterate. This was the finding raised by the Senate Committee on Basic Education and the Philippine Statistics Authority last April, led by Senator Sherwin Gatchalian. They also found that 18 million students who have graduated from junior and senior high school are still not functionally literate. So, I'm sure the first question that pops in your mind is, what happened? Why is the number is so big? And what can we do to resolve this? That's why in this B-side episode, I'm here with Mr. Nicolas Nicky M. Tanazas, the education specialist of UNICEF Philippines, to help us understand the picture behind the data and what the country can do about the situation. Hello, Sir Nicky. Thank you so much for being here in our today's B-side episode. Alright, so to kick off this episode, Sir Nicky, just like what I've said in my intro about the findings, that there are 24 million Filipinos aged 10 to 64 years old that are considered as functionally illiterate, as well as the 18 million junior and senior high school graduates. So, in UNICEF's point of view, how alarming is this or how big the problem is? Go ahead, sir.
When the news was broken to the public, I mean, of course, everyone was alarmed. We already know that there's a learning crisis, but this angle is quite new in the sense that even if people graduated from high school already, it's possible to be not functionally literate. So this is very alarming because you need to be able to trust the education system, right? That when you graduate from the system, you will be literate, not just functionally literate, but actually competitive in terms of looking for work or going to college or further training. So this is very alarming. I just wonder if there was enough conversation already in our society about how this statistic was actually computed and how it was decided that it was going to be like this. So I don't know if you want us to define further how functional literacy would be better understood. But short answer to your question is that this is very alarming because definitely illiterate kids will form our workforce, will form a majority of our society, and this would erode their competitiveness, not just locally, but also internationally. So it's a major concern, and in a way, it's good that it's being discussed so that there's further momentum in terms of serving or finding solutions for the learning crisis. So,
all right. Sure, Sir Nicky. So, for the benefit of our readers po, can you let us know what is function literacy in this new study? Since I believe that the PSA added some criteria, that's why this led us to this figure po. Go ahead, sir.
There was a distinction between basic literacy and then functional literacy in the sense that it's not enough for you to be able to recognize letters and words, right? You need to understand what you're reading so that you can make the most out of the information that you're getting. The way that the PSA asks these questions to the public is that they have a series of questions starting from very easy ones going to more difficult paragraph-like questions, right? So if the person can answer the first few questions, which are numerical in nature. So there was a question about if a kilo of rice costs so and so, how much would 2 kilos cost? So that would already give you an indication of, number one, literacy in the sense that they're able to understand somehow the question, and number two, they are able to do basic mathematical equations. So that's the first few steps. There was a second question on division, I think. So how much will half a kilo of sugar cost if 1 kilo costs 88? So something like that. You're gonna have to divide the kilo. So you're gonna have to understand the question, and then you're gonna have to do the correct operation. So that gives you an indication that the person can read, the person can write when they answer, and then they can compute. Those three factors, they give you the definition or the complete package to be called basic literate, right? So that's basic literacy. But then there are further questions that are in the form of paragraphs, and you need to read the story, and you need to look at certain tables, and then have certain answers to some questions. And that would really give you an indication of whether the person reading it or answering can really understand. So in the past, there were different sets of questions, but now we have an updated question. It even asks about heat index and others. So you'd understand that the comprehension is not just about understanding, but it's also about connecting your understanding to other information that you might have heard or you might know from other sources, like making sense of everything that you learned, or have a pattern in terms recognizing a pattern of all the information that you're getting. If you're able to answer these two questions, then you can be called functionally literate, meaning that you can comprehend what you're reading, and you're actually able to access different parts of your brain in terms of analysis and interpretation and others. And this would allow you to provide the correct answer to the question. So this is what we strive for. At the very least, your basic education system should be able to produce all graduates that are functionally literate.
All right. Oh nga, sir. It's really quite concerning. Ano? It's because given the data stating that there are millions, 18 millions, I believe, of junior and senior high school graduates. So it's quite expected that by this time you already know how to comprehend, I believe, as early as elementary, right? Or even before you graduated elementary, you are expected to be functionally literate. How much more if you are senior high school graduate? So, sir, to help us understand the bigger picture here, what happened? What led us to this ginormous number, as I would like to describe it? Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so it's we're gonna try to answer it very briefly, but it's a combination of many factors, no? So now DepEd is being placed in the spotlight in terms of the basic education system, but we should remember that even before the kid reaches kindergarten, at 5 years old, from age 0 to 5, there have been a lot of possibilities to encounter disadvantages, problems, or concerns with the kid. So essentially, when a kid gets to kindergarten, it's a combination of whether they have advantages or disadvantages in their health, in their genes, in their home environment, in the physical environment that they are in, maybe also economic factors in terms of access to resources, access to good nutrition, and others. So when you get into the system, you're not starting with a clean slate. You're starting with a set of people that have different kinds of disadvantages, right? So if their early childhood was not properly prepared, then starting 5 years old, starting kindergarten, you would begin to work with kids who have their own disadvantages, right? And then now it will be up to the basic education system to try to address or mitigate all of the issues of those disadvantages. But then usually there would be also some operational inefficiencies or issues within the system, which would make learning not at the optimal level. No, so we're looking at a combination of many factors, and then in the end, the result is that kids are able to move through the system without actually learning all the competencies that they need for every grade level that they go through, and then they might be able to graduate somehow without the necessary competencies. So it's a full-blown combination of factors.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, how about naman yung nangyayari on the ground? It's because based on my empirical observation, there are students na pinapasa kahit na bumabagsak on certain subjects. And I also heard that there are teachers na yun nga, nagbigay sila ng failing grade based on the performance of the student and napipenalize daw sila by it. So in a way, sir, the system kind of enabled this practice na allowing our students to elevate without those necessary competencies yet. So can you give us what is your thoughts on this, or can you give us a better picture of this book? Go ahead, sir.
So that one, I think it's a major factor also within the system of basic education, right? But we need to nuance the analysis of that one, is because when people talk about it, they feel like it's just a product of being lazy or being scared of reprimand. The idea there is that it's really a whole range of incentives, no, defining why it's being done like that. So, for example, now, if we know that the whole grade 5 batch is not yet functionally literate, or they cannot read at the grade 5 level, what can we do? Can we all tell them to hang back and stay at grade 5, go for one more year into grade 5, and then try to learn the competencies for another year? Then it would pose a lot of operational issues and things like that. And then you've identified some of the challenges in terms of the teacher at their personal level. So parents would come and say, please let my kid go to the next grade level. And then the teacher is sort of averse in terms of, I don't wanna justify why I have a repeater in my class. And then worse, if you declare a repeater, that same kid that would require a lot of work to catch up will still be with you, and then you would have to do additional effort to really make him or her catch up, right? So the incentive structure, I think, is not in the favor of high stakes assessment and passing to the next grade level, in the sense that it's not very practical for everyone who cannot complete the competencies to stay behind. It will not be very practical with all of the teacher shortages, classroom shortages, or the shortages in terms of materials, right? So it's not practical. But that's not to say that we can't do anything. And hopefully in the next part of the discussion, we can discuss about possible solutions to that one.
All right. So given all the challenges you've mentioned, Sir Nicky, so where can we start now? Go ahead, sir.
So we did the first step. The first step is to recognize that there's a problem, right? So the mere existence of our EDCOM is recognition that there's a learning crisis. And then I think the agencies involved, not just DepEd, but all the education agencies, they're really on their toes in terms of trying to catch up all of the learning losses or the poor indicators that we have. But more so for DepEd, I think they've identified a few areas wherein we can really focus. And they identified specific strategies or levers on how to actually achieve all of these plans that they have. So the problem is there's just so many, and everything is urgent. Everything is urgent. Everything is a priority. And then the challenge now is really how to mobilize everyone to move in the correct direction, but also make sure that all of the aspects that you've identified are moving well. So you need to talk about basics in terms of inputs for classrooms, textbooks, teachers, right? And then you need to talk about the well-being of learners. Bullying was a major issue. Disruption of classes because of climate issues was a big deal. And then you need to talk about the quality of teachers or additional support to teachers so that they can do their jobs properly. You need to talk about resources going into basic education so that we can do more investments at the early stages, basic education and early childhood education. And then lastly, if we were starting from zero, then we could sequence our work easily, right? But we're starting from a position we're starting at some, but there has been a long-standing problem. So aside from fixing for the future, I think you also need to address the problems of those who have undergone the system already, those who were out of school, those who did not finish high school, those who finish but are still not functionally literate. So you also need to provide catch-up solutions for them so that they can change their trajectory in their professional life. So there's a lot to do, but the main message I would like to give would be to invest early. So early childhood education, foundational learning. If we only had 100 pesos to spend all of that in early childhood and basic education.
I like what you've said, sir, that we also need to address yung wala na rin sa ating educational system. So I'm curious, sir, since literacy is prerequisite in many jobs, specifically sa mga high-paying jobs, so if you're not functionally literate, ano yung trabaho nitong mga ito? Or ano yung potential mo maging trabaho if you're not functionally literate? Go ahead, sir.
Aside from, good question, no, about the work. But aside from that, you need to also look at the overall economic situation, right? So, for example, it's been thrown around yung term na gig economy, for example. It's very difficult for newcomers to the labor force to have a good career and a long career in one place right away, right? The gig economy is really overtaking like how jobs are found and jobs are kept. Also, a lot of challenges in terms of competitiveness of countries in different situations, right? So that also gives you an idea of the kinds of work available to the kids and then or the graduates. And then one last thing to consider is, for example, if you would be applying, if a grade 12 graduate or a grade 10 student would be applying for a basic position, for example, in a fast food company, as a waiter or as a server or whatever. The main problem is that it will not just be grade 12 graduates applying for that position. They would be competing against college graduates. They would be competing against students with 2 years college. They would be competing against former professionals who don't have jobs anymore and then are trying to look for ways to make a living, right? So it's difficult to gauge how competitive our grade 12 graduates would be because the comparison would not be apples to apples, right? So but there's an overall consensus among business owners and chambers of commerce that grade 12 graduates need more training. And there needs to be like intermediate solution to that, so that after undergoing certain interventions, then they can be seen as more competent or more competitive by business owners or hiring managers or whatever. So that's it for now. Over.
All right, so we are now down to our last question po. So, aside from the national government's role, ano naman po yung role ng mga parents and the local government in contributing at least for us to solve this problem?
Okay, so parents are the single biggest factors for the success of children, no? Number one, because of genes, number one. Number two, because of the environment that they provide to the kids, even before going to school and while the kids are going to school. So there needs to be a lot of support to parents, because there's no lecture, there's no seminar on how to be a good parent, right? But we have our parent effectiveness law, which recognizes that we need to support our parents so that they can support the children properly. So parents are the single biggest factors, and we need to really have programs for them. Number two, so the DepEd is not yet a devolved agency, meaning it's a centralized agency run by the Department of Education, which has regions, divisions, and schools. But the local governments have major roles in terms of augmenting the resources at the school level. So we are working with the DepEd, with EDCOM, and the DOF, and other government agencies to make sure that local government budgets, like the Special Education Fund or the General Fund, these things go into the correct spending at the school level, because they would be the ones to help us address some of the shortfalls in terms of the national budgets going into the schools. So the two actors that you mentioned have very, very significant roles to play in the education of our children.
In this B-side episode, we saw that the country's literacy problem is deep-rooted. The issue cannot be blamed solely on the education system. It is multifactorial and also involves the conditions students face outside the four corners of the classroom. Sir Nicky said, addressing this issue requires a whole-of-society approach, which includes parents, local governments, and the national government all need to work together, and it has to start while children are still young. He added that there is no silver bullets for a problem of this scale, which is why collaboration across all sectors is essential. UNICEF has expressed its commitment to supporting the government from policy making to on-the-ground implementation to help address the country's literacy problem. This has been another episode of B-Side. Again, this is Edge Eva. Subscribe now and enjoy industry insights on Philippine business and beyond.